Hey, I've been away for a while and haven't been in any videos. Apologize for that. But today I thought I'd talk about a card game that I've been into for the past year. Maybe a little bit longer than that. The card game's only been stateside for about 2 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. It's called Force of Will. We just had one of our big tournaments recently, Worlds 2016. Big mess at the end of that with one of our favorite one of the favorites to win getting disqualified for kind of a BSy reason, bit of a misplay. His opponent also misplayed in the previous round of the match, but that wasn't really taken into account of at all, and the judges didn't act on it until like an entire match later, during top four of the tournament. And it was really kind of a mess, and a lot of people have been speaking out against it, and it's been a big topic on the Force of Will Facebook page for the U.S. Player base. Anyway, the game is pretty new. It's a little bit similar to Magic the Gathering, a little bit similar to some of the other card games out there. But in essence, you have a card that leads your deck. It's called the ruler card. It has a front side and a back side, and it'll always have at least one ability on it that allows you to flip to the other side. It has different card types. We've got our chant card type, which is like the sorceries and instants in Magic the Gathering, and this is your common basic spell type for activating different effects and doing different things. In Magic the Gathering, you had your creatures. In this game, you have what are called Resonators, and it's essentially the same thing. It uses a 00 format of damage calculation and thing. Where in Magic the Gathering, the standard life starting total is 20. In Force of Will, your normal starting life total is 4,000. Most most of us US players really just think of that in terms of 40 instead of 4,000. Um, think like in Yu-Gi-Oh, where the starting life total was 8,000. But numbers in this game are a little bit lower than numbers in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like in Yu-Gi-Oh, a 2,000 attack monster is, it's your kind of low-end beat stick. Your it's your expected strength monster. The lower strength ones are usually seen as just, you're mostly playing those for their effects, not to attack with. And anything higher than that, you're really playing to gun for victory. In Force of Will, you're looking at a range between, there are 100 attack and 100 defense resonators that have good effects, and you use them and you expect to use them. And then there are like your average really beefy beat stick in Force of Will is like 1,200 attack and defense, and that's your real beefy beat stick. That's usually, that's boss monster level resonator of a deck. Like that's going to be your expensive to play card that you need more resources to get out on most occasions. Um, there are some deck builds and whatnot now that can get those kind of beefy cards out pretty quickly and with some ease. But there are also a lot of answers in this game to just get rid of them and make them go away. So it's a pretty good and interactive game. Recently, this has been out for about a day now. It was released last night, and because of it, the entire website for Force of Will was not reachable because there are so many people trying to download this, so many people trying to access the website to download this program. This is the Force of Will Battle Simulator, and that is essentially like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro program that was so widely used for playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Over the internet. This one will let you play Force of Will over the internet. It's pretty fantastic. It's only in it's in early beta right now, and it was just released as early beta, so there's no lobby system or anything like that in the program. It's just, it has a deck builder. It lets you play via direct connection between you and another player. You know, you can, there are a few options you can set up. You can choose what icon you want to use to represent yourself between all of the different the rulers that are available in the program right now. Let you select from their face graphics. So I'll select this one, which is Lunia, the Wolf Girl. She's one of the rulers in the game. She's the ruler for the Rage of Relay, or Relia, however you want to pronounce that. It's a Lovecraft mythos kind of theme there. It's like Cthulhu mythos kind of stuff. Those of you familiar with that kind of stuff will really, see some of the coolness of that. It has a little bit of communication-y stuff. You can choose little icons to represent, different feelings. Like this is a greeting icon, praising, surprise, sadness, thinking, gratitude, surrender, and you got a bunch of different things to choose from there. I like these ones because out of the starter decks, this is one of my favorite rulers from the starter decks. This is the flipped side of the Lunia character. We've got the deck editor. I'm just playing around with the deck editor here. All of the 5 starter decks for the latest actually released set, which is the only set that's available in the program right now. They should be released. They should be adding to this over time, with the previous sets that have already been released should be added to it, I believe. And they have definitively said that each set that's released from here on out will be added to it at the time during the time of release. So this should be a good representation of being able to play the game online with other players, be able to play test decks that you brew up and work with. And it has all 5 of our current starter decks. I've gone through. I just renamed these 2 to the actual name of the starter deck because I don't like starter deck 3, starter deck 4, starter deck 5. It just I just didn't like that, so I was going through to rename them. Go through here. As you highlight cards, it'll pop up both cards. In the case of rulers, it'll pop up both sides of the card, or any dual-sided card for that matter, which there are a couple. There's one in this set, a couple in the previous set for it, and probably going to be a couple more as sets are released and all that, which is a new kind of mechanic. But the ruler card will have its start side, which is really kind of inactive and doesn't really do anything battle-wise, but its effects will affect the game as it's being played. Judgment is the effect that lets you flip over. When the ruler card flips, it basically kind of becomes a resonator and can actively attack your opponent. In this character's case, Milliam, when he flips over, he gets attack and defense of 900, which is fairly good. It's middle high, middle low kind of for a resonator, but his effect is what makes him kind of useful. When he flips, you put the top card of your Magic Stone deck into your field, and that's pretty cool because normally you have to rest your ruler card to put a stone in the field, and that's actually a big mechanic in the game that sets it apart from games like Magic the Gathering, where your lands are part of your main deck. In this game, Magic Stones take the place of the land cards for your resource material of the game, and they're all part of their own separate deck, which has a minimum size of 10, and that's absolutely fantastic because you are always going to be guaranteed the ability to play one of those each turn, and you can choose not to play one of those so that you can Judgment or J activate and flip your ruler to the other side for its benefits. And not all of the rulers have this particular effect to put the top card of your Magic Stone deck into your field when you play. This ruler has that effect, and a few of the rulers from one of the previous sets had that effect. And one of the cool parts about this ruler is, while this starter deck is a purely light starter deck, only one type of resources needed for this deck. This ruler could be used in a multicolored deck, but still only use one type of stone, because you can pay for the cost of any fairy tale type resonators or creatures with light will. So if you're using a card, Red Riding Hood, she's a green fairy tale resonator that requires 2 wind will to play. For her, you could just spend 2 light will and still play it because of his effect, which takes place on both sides of the card, which is really great. This program, as you can tell, and this is just the deck words. This is just the deck editor, so it's going to have your same kind of feel as Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and a lot of the websites that let you build decks. You get your card list here. You can search by card type. Like here, we get the J Ruler card type. We get another light J Ruler here, 0 to 6 stages. You can see that when you activate her and she flips, she has an attack and defense of 1100, which is stronger than Millium, and her effects are different. When she flips, she does not get the stone, but when she flips, she also has a pretty beefy effect, which is J Resonators your opponent controls. J Resonators refers to the J Ruler, which is the flipped side of the ruler card, and Resonators. So both of those kind of card types on your opponent's field lose the following effects and cannot gain the following effects due to the continued effect of this card being on the field, which is they can't have flying, they can't have first strike, swiftness, precision, or imperishable. Imperishable is an effect that I guess you wouldn't, if you don't play Force of Will, you wouldn't recognize right off the bat. Imperishable would be the effect that it's an effect specific to J rulers. That is, if the card dies, it doesn't lose the ability to flip again. When it dies, it will flip back to its ruler side, go back to the ruler zone, and it'll be able to act Judgment again and come back to its flip side again. It can come back into play if it has Imperishable, which is a really powerful effect for certain cards. But flying is an obvious one. The card flies. You can't block it unless another card has flying. First strike, again, is pretty obvious. It's a little bit different in Force of Will than Magic the Gathering. First strike in Force of Will means that if you attack, your card will deal damage before the blocking card does damage. However, if your card is attacked, which is a different mechanic in Magic the Gathering, since in Force of Will you attack individually rather than all at once. So and in Force of Will you can attack specific resonators if they are rested, which would be the equivalency of tapped in Magic the Gathering. If a opponent's resonator is rested, you can attack it directly with one of your resonators. And so if the rested resonator has first strike and you attack it, it does not actually deal its damage first, because it only does that when it's attacking. So it's kind of a little bit less intuitive than in Magic for players that came directly from Magic the Gathering, so it can be a little bit difficult to mess with. Swiftness, that just means when it hits the field, it can attack the same turn it hits the field, and it can use abilities that require it to be rested. So, basically, it's unaffected by summoning sickness, quote unquote. Now, summoning sickness in this game, which it isn't called that, it doesn't really have a name in this game. But basically, a resonator that you play cannot attack or be rested for abilities unless it's been in play from the start of the turn. Meaning, you can play a resonator that has a tap ability, that has a rest or tap ability, but you cannot use it that turn. However, on your opponent's turn immediately following yours, you would be able to use that ability because it was in play at the start of their turn. So Summoning Sickness, if you will, lasts less time in this game. It only lasts as long as a single turn, not until it becomes your turn again. So that's a little bit of a different mechanic that you might have to get used to if you pick up Force of Will on top of playing Magic the Gathering. Precision in this game, earlier in the game's lifespan, it was referred to as target attack, and that meant that the Resonator with target attack could attack a non-rested or non-tapped Resonator, which goes against the standard flow of the game. The naming of this was it was changed to being called Precision instead of target attack to remove confusion on the idea that the ability causes an instance of targeting, which it does not. So things that say they cannot be targeted, people would I believe there were some cases of people thinking that you couldn't use target attack against these things because they felt it was an instance of targeting, where it is not. While you can't target it with like spells or abilities, target attack just means you can attack things that aren't rested. It doesn't mean you attack target. Wordsy, explainy bits, and just mean it's just to remove that confusion of the instancing of targeting, which doesn't occur when you attack a Resonator with that you attack a Resonator that can't be targeted, or you give a thing that can't be targeted. Give the thing an ability that says it can't be targeted in response to somebody attacking it that has target attack. It's just bullshit. And yeah, that's only a bit. I already went over imperishable, just meaning it doesn't quote unquote die. Now, normally when your ruler dies, they flip back to their start side, go back to the ruler zone, and the only thing that they can do is call stones. However, the rules for that have changed slightly since the start of the game to make your ruler card mean more in the game rather than just being another card on the field. Now, when the ruler card gets destroyed on its J ruler side, it goes back to its ruler side, goes back to the ruler zone, and now it can no longer use the judgment ability. The judgment ability is now just like erased from the card for the rest of the game, unless it had imperishable when it died. But the other abilities of the card are still activatable. You can still use the other abilities of the card, meaning that the choice of J ruler for your deck now has a little bit more impact and means a little bit more to the game and can be encompassed in your strategy a little bit more. And it also means in a lot of cases, if your J ruler gets destroyed, your deck isn't completely assed out from that point on. It means you can now do a little bit more, and it can still interact with the game beyond just being there to call stones to play cards. Continuing on with the program, and besides I think this is a little bit self-explanatory. This just helps you search out by card type will type, card type, specific keywords. You can search for specific cards through the keywords. You can search for zero cost things, which would the only things that I think are showing up here would be rulers as zero cost. And even if I search like that, okay, so there's a few more. Zero cost things would technically be the stones, which like Magic the Gathering, there are also dual stones, which produce multiple types of will, or one of multiple types of will, usually. And there are about 10 different dual stones that just recently got reprinted. And, like Tundra, all that from Magic the Gathering. They're not as expensive as the dual stones, the dual lands in Magic the Gathering, and they seem to be a continuing thing with the game now, as we've just changed formats to the new format with the latest set release that would have rotated out dual stones from the game. And since they've reprinted them in the latest set, dual stones are now staying in the game. And I'm not sure how much I agree with that, whether they should stay or whether we should have gotten a different resource similar to dual stones but more costly, like pain lands, where to get the other mana that this could possibly produce, you have to pay for it in life or something. Lose 100 life and then get your alternate will color, something like that. So could be a thing, but with the game being still relatively early in its lifespan, I guess I'm pretty fine with it. And we don't have access to all of the cards in this program, and the only cards we have access to are the starter decks from the latest release and the cards available in the booster packs of the latest release. This program also allows you to keep replays of game, as well as I said, you play the game. To play a game with another person, if you're gonna host the game, you connect this button, check whether you're gonna play single battle or match battle, which would be a best 2 out of 3. And you can, I believe, the exempt feature is to exempt deck restraints, like if there's like banned cards in the format or something like that, this will exempt it from being paying attention to the ban list, I believe. There's no super explanation about the exempt, but I believe that's what it is. For this, they're probably going to expand this a little bit more to take, when they put more cards out, to take into account New Frontiers format, which is the current cluster being released, and one cluster before that, which is usually cluster should be, I believe, four active set releases. So right now we have just started Lapis Cluster with Curse of the Frozen Casket as its first set, and the previous cluster before that is the Alice Cluster, which started with 7 Kings of the Land and ended with Battle for Ataraxia. And the cluster before that was the Grim Cluster, and the game original the previous New Frontiers format was Grim Cluster and Alice Cluster. We've just rotated formats. It's now Alice Cluster and the new Lapis Cluster. So we've lost access to a lot of cards. We now have a smaller card base to make our decks for New Frontiers format. And we'll be getting more cards for the next 3 sets, and then we'll have a full card selection, the same as we used to, with of course different cards. And then when the cluster after Lapis Cluster's first set releases, we'll have a rotation again, and now Alice Cluster will no longer be in New Frontiers format. We also have the Wanderers format. Now Wanderers format has Grim Cluster, Alice Cluster, and the new Lapis Cluster as all available sets, and has a ban list in it that bans, I think, about 6 cards, just to prevent non-interactive decks or just really unfun decks that make the game unfun because they're just the only deck that was viable and stuff like that. 2 of the rulers are banned in this. One ruler being a Kaguya ruler, and the other ruler being the dreaded Reflect Refrain, which is just a very non-interactive ruler. It's either you play this ruler or you're not going to be competitive because everybody's playing this ruler. It's just made it just unfun in a lot of situations, unless people specifically just agreed to not play the deck. And in a lot of big tournaments, that's just not ever going to be a thing, to just agree not to play the best deck possible. So, and even in New Frontiers format, Reflector Frame is also banned, just to prevent the level of salt that card was putting off, even after it was errated, to make it less gross. Because just the way the card was designed, it was undestroyable on its J ruler side, because it had its own an activated effect that had no cost. It has activated effects that have no cost or anything like that. It was errated, so you could only use these effects on your own turn and only once per turn, which did limit it a little bit, but it's still just a really broken ruler that just should really have been play tested more and should not have been released in the state that it was. And even with the errata to it, it still was gross, and that's the reason why it got banned. And it took a long time for them to really put down the hammer and actually create ban lists as a thing. And it really shouldn't have taken them that long to do it. If you're going to play against somebody else, if you're going to play against somebody, you put their IP address here and the port you're going to connect on right here, and then you click this. It's not going to connect because there's nobody at this address on my local network right now. Well, this is probably my address on the local network because the last time I used this, I just connected to I ran the client twice and connected to it just to test to make sure everything worked well. But that's really all I have to say about it. Get the help button. Enter your opponent's IP address. Push the join button. If you're gonna host, make sure your ports are open. Tell who you're playing with your IP address, and when you create it, you just wait for them to connect. All that fun, yes. There are a few settings. This comes in two. You can use 2 languages. The game's in English, the game's in Japanese, or program, I guess. And yay, Japanese. I mean, there's no real significance between that if you actually know how to play, and if you know what your cards do. So, surprise, surprise. However, it does have full card art for both English and Japanese, so the cards actually show their Japanese text if you select it in Japanese. So that's not exactly surprising. And if it is, I'm sorry. But I guess I'll just end this with playing the replay of my test of the game. I didn't really do anything special or didn't really customize anything. I just took 2 of the starter decks and played it out. And well, this will just show you a bit of how to actually play the game. And play. And start the game. Get 5 cards. You get a mulligan at the start of the game. That mulligan allows you to take 1, none, or all 5 of your cards in your hand. You put them on the bottom of your deck, and then you draw cards to bring yourself back up to 5 cards. The turn starts with you. First turn of the game, the player that's starting the game doesn't get his draw, doesn't get to draw, but gets to go first. And Magic the Gathering does the same thing. Yu-Gi-Oh does the same thing. Second turn player gets their draw as as their compensation for not going first, I guess. And it just kind of plays out similar to Magic the Gathering. I don't really know if there's anything more I can really explain here. I mean, if you could stop and read all the cards going on, kind of a thing. After this finishes playing out, I'll show you the webpage where you can download this if you wanna check it out for yourself. But I don't know. I gave up Magic the Gathering when I really got into playing this, and it's really just been fun for me. Like I don't really have any major things to say about it other than that. It's just a fun card game. But yeah, I've been pretty silent here on videos for the past week or so because I've had a lot of stuff going on, and over the past couple of days it's been coming to a head. The new release for this card game was on like the 9th, and and this last week was just me going out and talking to people and playing with people in the new card game of the new release of the card game. My local game store just started a tournament of where we all buy a starter deck and we just play with the starter decks in the tournament. And the starter decks come with 3 booster packs, so we've got the starter deck and those 3 booster packs to edit the starter deck with. And each week we get an extra pack to add to our pool of cards to work with in the tournament. So there's a little bit of RNG on what's available to us. So people who get really good pulls in their packs will have a little bit of more of an advantage, but everybody's roughly on the same what's the same playing field. Like there's not too much going on to give anybody real advantage. So people with more money don't have more advantage in this format. It's just, if you get really good cards in your packs that also are playable in the starter deck that you bought, you have, a good chance of performing better. Also, to some extent, what the starter deck that you chose does help you out. Like, the starter decks being played here, the Dark starter deck and the Fire starter deck. I'm using the Fire starter deck in the tournament, and it is kind of advantageous. It's a more aggro-y starter deck, and it does perform quite well against a lot of the other starter decks. I think the light starter deck and the blue starter deck, I think, give me the most trouble. The blue one, if it plays out nicely, just it shuts the red one down for a lot of the game. And if I don't draw my answer cards, my good removal cards, my damage cards, the blue deck always has such good hand advantage and can bring out a 12/12 beat stick pretty easily if it plays out right. And if I can't play out well and be able to respond to that each time, I won't have a chance. So that deck can be pretty problematic, but at the same time, the deck is really a reactive deck rather than an active deck. So it's really hard to be really competitive with that. It's hard to be really actively competitive in that deck. So I don't know. The green deck is also one of the most powerful of the starter decks, just because the ruler for that deck is kind of insane. Whenever you play your second card, you put a 100/100 wind elf resonator token into your field. So tokens are now kind of a thing a bit right now. Like tokens are kind of a new mechanic for the game, and the second card you play each turn, whether it's your turn or your opponent's turn. So if you end up playing 2 cards in your opponent's turn, that's another resonator on your field. and that's pretty powerful. That can make the deck really swarmy. And if you J Activator, which is a little bit expensive at 5 will, so that can be pretty expensive. This deck really ramps pretty good. It has it has ways to get will out onto the field, and it has a pretty good draw power in the deck. So you should always have a hand in this. If you get to the point where you're top decking, it's because you've always had so much will, you can play a lot of cards. And this deck really is advantageous if you can play more than one card per turn, because a lot of the cards have an effect that if you've played 2 cards this turn, you get to do something extra. Like Resonators, that if you played 2 cards this turn, draw a card. If you've played 2 cards this turn, unrest one of your stones. If you've played 2 cards this turn, this card and target card on your opponent's field deal damage to each other. So you can use that to wipe a card off your opponent's field and open up space for you to just rush in. And since this deck is such a swarmy deck where you can get so many things on the field, and if you get so many things on the field and also J activate, since primarily you have elves in this deck, and you'll have elf tokens, whether you just let them pile up or use them as chump blockers to block incoming attacks. If you can flip onto this, other elves you control get +4/+4. So your little 1/1 elf tokens are now 5/5s. Suddenly they're kind of a threat. They're not just there, they're there and they have presence. And then there's Resonator in here that gives all other wind element resonators +2/+2. So you get that on the field. Now your elf tokens are 3/3s, and if you have that on the field and you've flipped, your wind resonators are 7/7s. That gets really threatening really quick, especially if you have a lot of them. So this deck can be very swarmy and can overwhelm some of the other decks really, really well, just because it has such a presence and it can just run through the other decks that may only have two or 3 resonators on the field. This deck will have like 7 or 8 resonators on the field. So not only can you run through what they have on the field, and have them block until they don't have any blockers left, and then just go straight face, but it can be really fun. And it's a really powerful starter deck. It gives you a lot of really good cards for the price. Now, mind you, depending on where you are, the price of the starter decks can vary greatly. I've seen online in the group. I've seen a place in Arkansas. There's a store in Arkansas that was selling these for $16 a deck. And the deck is a 40 card deck, 10 card stone deck with a ruler, and then it comes with a pair of dice, which are absolutely fantastic. The dice are fantastic. They're translucent, they're sparkly, and they have the Force of Will emblem on the side that would be the 1. So they're really awesome dice. And then it comes with 3 booster packs. And from my experience opening 4 of the 5 starter decks myself, the booster packs that come with them are really well seeded. Like, they're specifically seeded to have a higher chance of having good pulls. Like, I've pulled 2 of the rulers that you can get in the booster packs just from booster packs from the decks. Like, I've pulled Zero, and I pulled Wukong, which any of you familiar with DBZ will know that Son Goku was based after Sun Wukong from the Journey to the East, or Journey to the West story. And Sun Wukong is a character that you can play in this card game now. Those of you familiar with the H.P. Lovecraft's stories are familiar with the ancient or the old ones and all that, the story of Cthulhu and all that. Well, we have a card type called Cthulhu's in this game, and Yog-Sothoth is a thing, and it's all really cool. Like this resonator, Nyarlathotep, just the faceless one, it's just really amazing and great, and I just love this card game, and I can't fanboy enough over this. But if you're into card games, I recommend giving it a try. if you've got a LGS close by and whatnot, give it a try. Have fun with it. If there's other players there, they'll most likely be absolutely happy to play with you and help you learn how to play. So it's just kind of a thing. For the card game, for this program, you should be able to you should find it at this website, which is fowtcg.com/battlesimulator/index.html. This website will it's got the trailer showing the program, which doesn't really do much less of what I've just done, and has a little bit of tutorialistness on it. Later on, it's not available now, but you'll be able to connect this program with another program that I guess that they're going to be releasing for Android and iOS, I guess, called the Book of Orbs, which I think might link with the Force of Will system, the willpower system app that they've already had out, which will just allow you to have bronze, silver, and gold foil cards in the program. Bragging rights, digital stuff. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go down, but I think it's relative to the willpower points that you get from the booster packs, which is just it's a QR code that has it's just a special QR code. You use the app, you photograph the QR code, and it tracks your points, and it's online connected, so that each QR code that comes in a pack can only be used once by anyone. Like if I use this code, I can't just give it to you and then let you use the code. It doesn't work like that. It's like a one-time use thing. And the more codes you have, the more points you have. And at the end of each year or each time frame of the year for this, they give out some pretty cool promos. So this time around, we had some uber rarity reprinted cards from the Seven Kings of the Land set, which were the Seven Kings of the Land rulers reprinted as uber rares, which didn't exist at the time that that set was released. So anybody who gets those is like really lucky, and they're going to be worth a good amount of money, which is a thing that this card game doesn't have a lot of. This card game doesn't have a lot of really money cards, aside from one card from an earlier set that got released when it wasn't supposed to, Cheshire Cat. There's like a pantsless variant of it that just doesn't have the stockings that are on most of the copies of the card, and so that one usually sees $50 price tag on it versus the other one, which is only like a $20 card or a $15 card, something like that. So it's just all good and fun. And since this program is free to play, free to download and all that, and it's still only in beta, it's a nice if you can just learn how to play and just play with this for a little bit, see if you like the game, or just go out, get a starter deck and play with somebody else, see if you like the game. It'd be great, because I'd love to see the community for this game grow. I think the only major complaint that I've really ever heard about is people they don't like the anime art style. Well, I can't really blame them for that. And some players might not want to get into it because they've already invested so much time and money into their card game of choice, and I can't blame them for that either. I mean, Magic the Gathering is a pretty intensive card game, money-wise, if you play that. So, it's kind of a thing. But if you're a casual card gamer in Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or the Pokemon card game, and you still have a little bit of money left over that you could try something new, give Force of Will a try. It's fun. I enjoy it. But that's really all I got to say. If you like this, give me a thumbs up, subscribe. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down, subscribe, and maybe I'll catch you with something good later on that you will enjoy. And if you've got any suggestions on content that you think I should cover in the world of gaming, tell me down below. This is RedMage Gaming. I'm all about all kinds of gaming. I have my personal likes and dislikes on different games, and I'll tend to naturally on my own follow games that I personally like and personally, can really get behind. If you have a personal like of your own and there's enough of you who want to see that kind of content, I'll give it a shot. I know right now I don't have a lot of content, but that'll change over time, especially if I've got more feedback telling me what you guys want to see. And like if you, I mean, since like right here, this is clearly showing that I have an enjoyment of card games, and I don't buy a lot of product because I can't really afford it yet, and can't really afford it right now. But if you want to see some of the stuff that I pull and I open from packs, I'll gladly I'll wait till I get home to open stuff instead of opening it right then there on the spot in the store, because I tend to I'll buy a handful of packs at my LGS, and I'll go sit down and I'll open it in the back, just because if the shop attendant handed me some really good packs, I I give them a big thumbs up. Like I bought a couple packs the other day and I pulled what's called a God pack. And God packs, you can get either one of each dual stone in the God pack for this set, or you get one of each super rare for this set, which is absolutely fantastic. So I pulled a God. It was the first pack that I opened for the new set, and I pulled a God. It was a God pack, and the owner of the store is the one that gave me the couple of packs that I bought, and I gave him a big thumbs up. And I'm like, fantastic, fantastic, thanks. You gave me an awesome pack. So like I'm always very thankful to them. And to be honest, I'm not gonna give the store's name out, just mainly because like they're not paying me to give them a shout out, but I'm kind of shouting out to them anyway on the down low. But yeah, like I've noticed I get a lot of good pulls when I'm over there, when I buy product from over there. Like a lot of times, like even in some of the other card games that I've played, like I'll buy a bunch of product from certain stores, and I'll just pull kind of mediocre stuff, and I'll go over there and buy a couple of packs, and I'll pull some really fantastic stuff. So it just might be my timing, or other people have bought packs before me, and I just happen to buy a couple of really good packs right after them, or something like that. So it's really amazing. It's really fun, and yeah, I've gotten really rambly. Like I had my outro, and here I am still talking. So yeah, like, subscribe, unlike, subscribe, or dislike, subscribe, whatever. Just you know, comment. That's the biggest thing that I want to see is comments. Like this video could get 0 likes and dislikes, I would not care, but I would love to see some comments. I want to know what people want to see on my channel. I want to know what kind of content people really want to see. I mean, I've done a little bit of RPG Maker stuff. Um, Now this little bit of Force of Will stuff. In the line of RPG Maker stuff, new program that was released recently called Smile Game Builder. I downloaded the demo for that. I have yet to even run the demo for Smile Game Builder, and I'm going to do a first impressions for Smile Game Builder later on, um, depending on what I need to do for the next day or so. I plan on doing a video for that. It'll be my first impressions, and it'll probably be about 20-30 minutes of just me going through the program and seeing what it's capable of, because I have no idea exactly what it's capable of. I know it's kind of like RPG Maker, but I really haven't read that much about it. I've I, I've looked at a couple of screenshots here and there because somebody else told me about it before it was released. Somebody that had a pre-release copy of the game for basically marketing reasons, to get people to see the program and demo it out and give feedback and all that. So I want to show my first reaction to that, because up until now, with as far as game creators are concerned and game engines are concerned, the only real experience I have is a little bit of Unreal Engine, a little bit of Unity, Fighter Maker, and stuff like that. And of course the RPG Maker series, which I have experience with from RPG Maker 2000 to the current RPG Maker MV. I've used all of them, at least to some extent. And well, next time when you see me next, it'll be with Smile Game Builder. But till then, have fun.